What if there was a food that could completely restore your strength in just 12 hours? Elon Musk had never been one to shy away from challenges. After all, he'd faced adversity in the form of launching rockets into space, revolutionizing the automotive industry, and even attempting to colonize Mars. He was known for pushing the limits of possibility, both for himself and for humanity. But nothing had prepared him for the accident that would leave him feeling helpless in a way he'd never experienced before. It was a brisk Saturday morning, and Elon had just finished a long series of back-to-back meetings at SpaceX headquarters. Despite his exhaustion, his mind was racing with new ideas that could change the world. He was always thinking, always planning. But as he headed out the door to grab a quick coffee, he didn't see the slick patch of ice in front of him. The next thing he knew, his foot had slipped, and he crashed to the ground with an audible thud. The pain was instant, sharp, and blinding. Elon lay there for a moment, unsure if he had just bruised his pride or something more serious. But as he tried to stand up, he realized something was terribly wrong. His left leg was completely immobile. Panic started to set in as he called for help, but the realization hit him hard: this injury was far worse than he'd imagined. It wasn't just a sprained ankle, it was something deeper, something that could take weeks or even months to heal. His thoughts immediately shifted. The man who had revolutionized industries, who had dared to do what others believed impossible, was now facing an obstacle he couldn't overcome with just his intellect or determination. The thought of being bedridden, incapable of moving around freely, was a nightmare. The paramedics arrived quickly and transported him to the hospital. After several tests, the doctors confirmed what he had feared: a severe ligament tear, possibly even some nerve damage. The road to recovery, they explained, would be long. Musk was told to expect months of physical therapy, countless appointments, and no guarantees of a full recovery. Months? Elon thought to himself, frustrated. I don't have that kind of time. He'd been through challenges before: grueling work hours, sleepless nights, and the constant pressure to innovate, but this was different. For the first time in his life, Elon Musk was faced with something he couldn't simply outthink, outwork, or outmaneuver. It was a stark reminder that even the most brilliant minds couldn't outrun their own physical limitations. As the hours passed in the sterile hospital room, Elon's mind raced. There had to be a solution. There had to be something, anything, that could speed up his recovery. His brain was constantly firing with ideas, and he quickly began scanning every piece of information he could find about injuries like his. He spoke to multiple doctors, asking about experimental treatments, cutting-edge therapies, and even alternative medicine. But everything he heard was disheartening: rest, recovery, physical therapy. But then, as he lay there thinking about what was next, a thought struck him like a bolt of lightning. What if there was something else? Something unconventional, something unexpected? Elon had always been a believer in pushing the boundaries of science and technology. Why should he not apply the same philosophy to his own healing? Was it possible that a food, some kind of supernutrient, could aid in rapid recovery? After all, nutrition had always been a huge part of human performance in other areas. Could it work for his body's healing process as well? He had heard rumors of superfoods in the past, but they had always seemed like the stuff of health fads. But could there be more to it? What if there was a food, one so powerful, it could speed up the body's natural healing process? Could this be my answer? Elon felt a spark of hope. Perhaps this wasn't the end. Perhaps it was simply the beginning of a new type of innovation, a personal journey to unlock a secret that could change everything. He had no choice but to explore this possibility. The doctors had told him to rest, but he wasn't ready to sit idly by. Not when there were answers out there, waiting to be discovered. He pulled his phone out and began to research. The more he read, the more fascinated he became. He stumbled upon articles about a food that had been linked to rapid tissue regeneration and accelerated recovery. It was a food that, while not a cure-all, seemed to hold significant promise in supporting the body's healing mechanisms. This wasn't some far-fetched idea, it was based on real scientific principles. Elon knew that nothing in life was certain, but the thought of trying something new, something that could change the way he healed, filled him with a sense of purpose. As a man who had reshaped industries, he had never backed down from a challenge. This time, though, it wasn't about rockets or electric cars. This time, it was about himself, about regaining his strength, not just for his work, but for his life. His mind was set. This food, whatever it was, could be the key to getting him back on his feet. But what was it? What food had the potential to transform his recovery in such a short amount of time? And more importantly, where could he find it? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? As he stared at his phone screen, he realized that this wasn't just about him. It was about something bigger, something that could change the way people thought about healing, about food, and about overcoming the obstacles that life throws at you. If he could unlock this secret, it could be the key to helping millions of people worldwide. And so began Elon Musk's journey, not just to restore his leg strength, but to change the future of recovery, health, and nutrition. He was about to embark on a quest that could alter the course of human understanding about the power of food. Little did he know, the answer lay closer than he ever could have imagined. Elon Musk had always been driven by a single, relentless pursuit: innovation. Whether it was sending a Tesla to space or developing a fully reusable rocket, his ability to push the boundaries of what was thought possible had made him a legend in his own right. But now, in the sterile confines of a hospital room, he was facing a challenge that even his intellect couldn't easily solve: his own body's failure. The accident had thrown him off balance in a way he hadn't anticipated. For years, he had managed to juggle the responsibilities of running multiple companies while pushing the envelope in both technology and science. But now, forced to slow down and rely on others, he felt vulnerable, something that had always been foreign to him. The idea of being unable to move freely was an unsettling thought, especially for someone whose entire existence was built on motion, whether it was the movement of rockets in space, cars on roads, or even the movement of ideas through society. But his injury wasn't just physical. It was a mental block. He wasn't used to being confined. The thought of weeks, months, of rehabilitation loomed over him like a dark cloud. He couldn't afford to be sidelined. There were too many things at stake. SpaceX's Mars mission, Tesla's innovation, and countless other ventures he was pouring his heart into. The idea that a torn ligament would slow him down felt unbearable. As the days dragged on, Elon grew restless. His mind refused to let the idea of waiting for recovery sit comfortably. What if he could use his innovation-driven mindset to bypass the long process of traditional healing? What if, just as he had disrupted the car industry, the space industry, and electric power, he could disrupt the healing process itself? Determined to find a solution, Elon dove deep into research. Late into the night, he scoured the internet for any possible clue, anything that could offer a way to accelerate his recovery. His focus was sharp, his mind whirring with possibilities, even in his current weakened state. He knew that the body's natural healing process was a complex one. The cells, the tissues, the proteins, they all had to work in harmony for the body to recover. And while the medical community had made significant strides in understanding these processes, there had to be something more, something that could expedite this healing process in a way that was still scientifically plausible. He was no stranger to cutting-edge technology and alternative treatments. He had often employed unconventional methods in his business ventures, ideas that others had dismissed as too risky or unproven. Why should this be any different? He could already hear the skepticism in his mind. It's just a sprained ligament. What's the big deal? But it was a big deal. It wasn't about the injury, it was about the feeling of helplessness. It was about not being in control. And that was something he couldn't stand. Elon's first course of action was to consult with his network. He sent out a flurry of messages to a few trusted individuals, doctors, researchers, and biohackers who had crossed his path in the past. One of the people who came to mind was Dr. Evelyn, a leading biochemist who had worked on various high-end nutritional supplements for athletes. She was the type of person who didn't believe in limitations, and Elon knew she would think outside the box. Dr. Evelyn responded quickly, setting up a video call to discuss potential solutions. Elon, I know you're looking for something to speed up recovery, but I'll be honest, it's not as simple as just taking a magic pill. However, there are ways to optimize the healing process through the right combination of nutrients, she said, her voice calm but filled with the kind of knowledge Elon respected. They talked for hours, diving into the science behind cellular regeneration and tissue repair. Dr. Evelyn outlined a variety of food sources that could contribute to faster healing. The typical advice of eat healthy didn't sit well with Elon. He wasn't interested in the average dietary recommendations. He wanted something that would give him an edge, a food that would act like a catalyst for healing. What about foods that are rich in compounds that can actually speed up cellular repair? Elon asked. Something like superfoods or nutraceuticals? Dr. Evelyn paused for a moment, clearly thinking. Well, there's one thing I've heard about, although it's not widely known or accepted yet. It's called astaxanthin, a powerful antioxidant found in algae. It's been shown in studies to promote faster healing, especially when it comes to muscle and tissue damage. Elon's ears perked up. Astaxanthin. It wasn't a compound he'd heard much about, but it was exactly the kind of unconventional solution he was looking for. He needed something that could not only speed up the repair process but also provide the necessary nutrients to keep his body in peak condition while it was healing. This could be a game changer, Elon said, excited. Where can I find it? Dr. Evelyn explained that astaxanthin was found in certain algae species, but it was most commonly extracted into supplement form. The compound had been used by athletes in some alternative medicine circles, though it wasn't widely accepted in the mainstream medical community. Still, its properties made sense to Elon. If it could speed up muscle repair and reduce inflammation, this might just be what he needed. Before the call ended, Elon promised Dr. Evelyn he would research the algae and make sure he sourced the highest quality product. Thanks, Evelyn. I'll be in touch soon. The next day, Elon began his search for the elusive compound. He dug into everything he could find about astaxanthin, its effects, the best sources, the ideal dosages. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that this was the key. With the clock ticking and his body refusing to heal on its own, he wasn't about to sit back and wait. He reached out to various suppliers and started ordering high-quality astaxanthin supplements. But that wasn't all. Elon was determined to take this research a step further. He wasn't going to simply trust one source of information. He needed to dig deeper into the scientific studies, talk to the leading experts, and make sure this would work for him. As he researched further, he came across other surprising superfoods, things like turmeric, omega-3 rich fish oil, and even bone broth, which had all been linked to rapid tissue repair. Elon knew he had to build a combination of these foods to maximize his recovery. He would leave no stone unturned. For someone who had spent his life creating rockets and electric cars, this challenge felt oddly personal. This wasn't about Mars or self-driving cars, it was about his own body, his own limitations, and the search for a way to transcend them. There was no more time to waste. In just 12 hours, he would begin the first phase of his experiment. Time was ticking, and Elon Musk wasn't about to let his injury stop him from pushing forward. Elon Musk was no stranger to high-stakes situations, but this one felt different. As he sat in his sleek, minimalist home office, the endless swirl of thoughts ran through his head. The injury had derailed him physically, but mentally, he was more determined than ever to find a way forward. The idea of letting time heal him like a regular person seemed impossible. No, he was going to accelerate his recovery, and in the process, perhaps change the game for millions of people around the world. He'd spent the past 48 hours sourcing the highest quality astaxanthin, omega-3 supplements, turmeric, and bone broth, each promising to work wonders on the body's healing mechanisms. He'd also consulted with several top nutritionists, specialists in inflammation reduction, and even reached out to a few biohackers he knew from his connections in Silicon Valley. It was a strange feeling. Normally, Elon operated in the realm of space and technology. World-changing missions and innovations that seemed light years beyond what others could even fathom. But now, he found himself diving headfirst into something more basic, his own biology. And though the task seemed simple on the surface, restore his leg strength, it was anything but. His challenge wasn't just to heal, it was to heal rapidly. He had created companies that pushed the envelope of human potential. This injury, he decided, would be no different. He would use every tool at his disposal to get back on his feet faster than anyone thought possible. By noon, Elon had organized his food regimen. He wasn't simply going to swallow pills and hope for the best. He was going to make it a holistic approach, incorporating the highest quality ingredients and implementing the kind of discipline that had made him a global icon. He started with the astaxanthin, this powerful antioxidant found in algae. It was said to be up to 6,000 times more powerful than vitamin C in fighting free radicals and reducing inflammation. The dose was key. He started with a recommended dose of 12 milligrams, which was considered a therapeutic level for tissue repair. Along with it, he took omega-3 fish oil, which had been shown to help reduce inflammation and promote joint health. Then, he focused on the turmeric, a spice that had been used for centuries in Eastern medicine. The active compound in turmeric, curcumin, was known for its anti-inflammatory properties. Elon wasn't about to underestimate its potential, so he ensured his turmeric supplement contained a high dose of curcumin, paired with black pepper extract for enhanced absorption. Finally, he incorporated bone broth, something that, on the surface, seemed almost too simple to be effective. Bone broth had been gaining popularity for its rich collagen content, which was essential for the body's ability to repair and rebuild connective tissue. There was no doubt in Elon's mind that the combination of these foods and supplements would give him the edge he needed. But it wasn't just about the food. Elon's mind was also active, constantly running through the details of his next move. While his body rested, his mind was engaged in a different kind of exercise, an intellectual one. His thoughts circled back to his recent research. He thought about how nutrition had always been a part of human performance, from athletes to astronauts, and how those who had gone the extra mile in optimizing their diets reaped the rewards of quicker recovery times, enhanced endurance, and better overall performance. If he could prove that food could accelerate recovery in the way that science was suggesting, it would be a huge step forward, not just for him, but for humanity as a whole. For the first time, he felt that his journey toward healing could have a far-reaching impact beyond his personal goal. It could provide a new model for recovery, helping those who were injured or debilitated get back to their lives faster. It could even inform future space missions where human recovery and healing would be critical in environments like Mars. As the clock ticked toward the 12-hour mark, Elon noticed something surprising. His pain, which had initially been sharp and unyielding, had started to subside. It wasn't gone completely, but it was noticeably reduced. His leg still felt heavy, but he could tell that there was a shift happening. Could it be the food? The supplements? He didn't know yet, but he felt an inkling of hope. To pass the time, Elon decided to take a walk, well, a very cautious one. He hobbled around his office, testing the waters, observing his leg's reaction to the simple movement. At first, the pain was sharp, but it wasn't unbearable. He was amazed at how much more manageable it felt compared to just 24 hours ago. This was only the beginning, but it was a promising start. He spent the next few hours reading through the latest research articles on regeneration and the effects of specific nutrients on tissue healing. His mind stayed active, even as his body rested. His curiosity, that driving force that had led him to some of his greatest achievements, was now fixated on this one goal, accelerating his healing process. As evening approached, he continued to monitor his progress, adding more nutrient-dense foods to his regimen. He didn't want to take any chances. He knew that this could be a breakthrough, and breakthroughs were never easy. They required precision, dedication, and an unyielding belief that there was always another way. The first 12 hours were crucial. This was the starting point, not the end. As Elon made his way to the kitchen for his evening meal, he thought about how this small experiment could transform his life, even if just in the short term. But what if it worked? What if this was the key to unlocking an entirely new understanding of human healing? His mind raced with possibilities. Elon felt a surge of excitement, not just about his personal recovery but about the potential impact this could have on the world. He wasn't just recovering, he was pushing the boundaries of what was possible. And if he could prove that food could be a tool in healing, that knowledge could change the way the world thought about health, nutrition, and the human body's extraordinary potential. "I'll keep pushing," Elon murmured to himself, looking at the clock. "I'm not done yet." As he took his first sip of bone broth, he couldn't help but smile. The road ahead was long, but for the first time since the accident, he felt like he was taking control once more. The next 12 hours would tell him everything he needed to know. The next 12 hours were a whirlwind for Elon Musk. He had embarked on his experiment with renewed enthusiasm, keen to see whether his self-designed regimen would actually work. It wasn't just about healing his leg, it was about proving something larger, that the conventional rules of recovery, those that required weeks or months of slow, careful rehabilitation, could be challenged and, perhaps, even rewritten. By the time the sun rose, Elon had already noticed something remarkable. His leg didn't feel as stiff. The ache that had once kept him up at night was now tolerable. He could move more freely, albeit still slowly and carefully. But there was a noticeable shift. A sense of optimism was building inside him. Was it the supplements? The food? The combination of all these elements together? He knew that he couldn't be sure yet, but he also knew that he had just completed one of the most important experiments of his life, and it was yielding results. Before breakfast, Elon documented his progress in a journal he had started just days ago. He noted the reduction in pain, the increased mobility in his leg, and the feeling of mental clarity that seemed to accompany the physical improvements. It was something he hadn't expected but welcomed nonetheless. The healing process, which he'd assumed would be a long and painful journey, was already showing signs of acceleration. Maybe there's more to this than just nutrients, Elon thought as he sat down at the kitchen counter with a cup of coffee. The world outside his window was just beginning to wake up, and the light was soft, casting a calm glow over his surroundings. This was a rare moment of peace for the man who often found himself surrounded by the chaos of ambition, technology, and innovation. He took a deep breath and focused on the task ahead. Though his leg had begun to feel better, he knew he couldn't let up now. It was critical to continue following the regimen he developed, making sure to stay on track. But more than that, he had to dig deeper into the science behind his results. This experiment wasn't just personal, it had the potential to change the way people approached recovery and health. Elon grabbed his phone and contacted Dr. Evelyn. They had been in touch regularly since the start of his healing journey, and she had been a crucial source of support and guidance. "Dr. Evelyn, I think it's working," he typed quickly, feeling a rush of excitement as he hit send. "The pain is almost gone, and I feel more mobile. It's been less than 24 hours since I started the regimen. Have you seen any studies or data that show these kinds of results so quickly?" He set the phone down and sipped his coffee. Within minutes, the phone buzzed. "Elon, this is incredible." Dr. Evelyn replied. "I've been following your progress, and it's nothing short of amazing. There are studies that show how powerful the combination of astaxanthin, omega-3, and turmeric can be, especially when combined with the body's natural healing processes. But I've never heard of anyone experiencing results so quickly. Keep going with the regimen, and stay in touch. I'm fascinated to see how this unfolds." Elon smiled as he read her response. He was encouraged, but he also knew that this was just the beginning. He had barely scratched the surface of understanding the full impact of his experiment, and there was still much more to learn. With the day ahead of him, Elon continued to track his progress. He scheduled a call with a few experts in regenerative medicine to dig deeper into how the compounds in his regimen were interacting with his body. It was clear to him that his goal wasn't just to heal himself, it was to learn how to optimize human healing. This knowledge could one day be used to help astronauts recover faster from the harsh conditions of space, or aid athletes in recovering from career-threatening injuries. If he could unlock the mysteries of rapid recovery, it could change everything. As Elon moved through the day, he felt a sense of renewed energy. Despite his injury, his productivity had remained high. He had found himself thinking more clearly, and in some ways, the pain and frustration of the past few days had pushed him to innovate in new ways. He wasn't just looking at his leg. He was examining the very nature of human resilience, understanding that this was an opportunity to rethink the way the world approached injury and recovery. Later in the day, Elon tested his leg again. This time, he was able to walk a bit further down his driveway, pushing himself to see just how far he could go without pain. The familiar stiffness remained, but it was more of a mild discomfort than the sharp, nagging pain he had felt just a day earlier. Okay, he muttered to himself, surprised at how far he had come. This is real. As evening fell, Elon reflected on the rapid changes in his condition. He had to remind himself that this was just the beginning. He couldn't afford to get complacent or too eager to jump back into full speed. Patience would still be required, he knew that. But something inside him clicked. This wasn't just about overcoming a temporary setback, it was about pushing the boundaries of human capability in a way that few had ever considered. That night, as he prepared his final meal of the day, another bone broth infusion with a hefty serving of turmeric and fish oil, he found himself thinking back to some of the key moments in his life: the day he founded SpaceX, the day Tesla became a household name, the day they landed the Falcon Heavy on solid ground for the first time. All of those moments had felt impossible at one point. But with perseverance, creativity, and a deep belief in what could be, he had achieved what others said couldn't be done. Now, this injury, this physical challenge, felt no different. He would push through it. He would figure out how to heal his body faster than anyone thought possible. And in doing so, he would set a new precedent, not just for himself, but for every person who faced injury or physical limitation. As he took a bite of his meal, he raised his glass in a silent toast to the journey ahead. "Here's to figuring out what the human body is really capable of," Elon whispered, his mind already racing toward the next step in his recovery and, ultimately, his quest to change the world yet again. The breakthrough had begun. The next day, Elon woke up to an unfamiliar sense of energy. His leg, which had been a source of constant frustration and pain for the past few days, felt almost normal. Not perfect, but significantly better than it had been 48 hours ago. He took a few cautious steps around his bedroom, testing the ground beneath him. There was no sharp pain, no stabbing sensation. Just a dull ache, as if his body was reminding him that it was still healing, but at an accelerated pace. Elon had spent the previous night reviewing his progress, analyzing every aspect of his experiment. He knew that his results so far had been surprising, but he didn't want to get ahead of himself. This was an uncharted territory, and he didn't want to mistake an initial improvement for complete recovery. Yet, there was something compelling about the speed at which his body was healing. As he walked around his kitchen, brewing his first cup of coffee for the day, his mind was already in motion. What had caused this rapid shift? Was it the combination of supplements? The bone broth? Was it a psychological effect from finally feeling a little bit of hope? Before he could go further into his thoughts, a notification pinged on his phone. It was from Dr. Evelyn. "Elon, I've been reading some interesting research. There's a new study showing that the body's circadian rhythm can play a significant role in the healing process. If we time your intake of healing nutrients correctly, we might be able to optimize your recovery even further. I think this could be the missing piece. Let's talk soon." Elon's eyebrows raised. A circadian rhythm-based approach to healing? This was something entirely new, and it sounded like the kind of unconventional thinking he thrived on. Without hesitation, he reached for his phone to call her. "Dr. Evelyn, this is exactly the kind of thing I was hoping to uncover," Elon said as soon as she picked up. "Timing the nutrients around my body's natural cycles. I've never heard of that in relation to recovery, but it makes sense. Tell me more." Dr. Evelyn explained the concept further. Research had shown that the body's circadian rhythm, its internal biological clock, was crucial not just for sleep, but for all forms of bodily repair and function. The body's natural cycles fluctuated throughout the day, and optimizing nutrient intake to align with these cycles could theoretically enhance the healing process. For example, she continued, certain nutrients are more effectively absorbed and utilized at different times of the day. If you time your meals, supplements, and even your exercise around these natural cycles, it could speed up your recovery exponentially. It's like hacking the body's rhythm. Elon listened intently, his mind racing with the implications of this information. The idea of syncing his recovery to his body's natural clock was revolutionary. Not only could this approach expedite his healing, but it could also help anyone recovering from injuries, athletes, the elderly, even astronauts in long-term space missions. The more Elon thought about it, the more the puzzle pieces clicked into place. All the ingredients he had incorporated into his healing routine, astaxanthin, omega-3s, turmeric, and bone broth, had been chosen for their powerful healing properties. But what if he could maximize their effects by aligning their consumption with his body's natural circadian rhythms? Elon wasn't one to waste time. Within the next few hours, he had already started creating a detailed schedule. He mapped out the best times of day to take each nutrient, how long after waking up he should begin the regimen, and when he should take a break for rest. He even scheduled brief walks throughout the day, hoping that some movement, rather than complete rest, would stimulate circulation and aid in the healing process. As he worked, his excitement grew. This wasn't just about healing a simple injury anymore, it was about pushing human potential to its limits. If this approach worked for him, it could be adapted to help people in ways that no one had ever imagined. It could become the foundation for a new form of medicine, a way to heal not just from injuries but from the wear and tear of daily life, from stress, fatigue, and even aging itself. By mid-afternoon, Elon felt the effects of the new routine. His energy levels were higher than usual, and he noticed that his mind was clearer, more focused. He was beginning to realize something he hadn't considered before: healing wasn't just a passive process. It was an active one. His body was constantly working to repair itself, and if he could give it the right tools at the right times, it could do so much more efficiently. When he finally took a break and sat down at his desk, Elon thought about his next steps. He wasn't just going to keep this discovery to himself. He wanted to see how far he could push this concept. Could he refine it further? Could he create a system of health and recovery based entirely on science, timing, and biohacking? The possibilities were endless. At this point, he felt unstoppable. The injury that had once left him feeling vulnerable and limited now seemed like nothing more than a minor setback. His mind was firing on all cylinders, and he couldn't help but feel like he was on the verge of something monumental. As evening arrived, Elon stood up from his desk and tested his leg again. This time, there was no hesitation in his movements. He walked with purpose, each step more confident than the last. Though his leg wasn't entirely healed, the difference from just a few days ago was astounding. "This is it," he said quietly to himself, a grin spreading across his face. "This is the future of recovery." His thoughts raced with the idea of scaling this method, making it available to the masses. If he could create a program that would allow people to heal faster, recover from injuries, or even optimize their general health, it would be a game changer. It was a new frontier, one that he could navigate, just as he had done with SpaceX and Tesla. But before that, he had to finish his own journey. He couldn't get ahead of himself. The work ahead would require patience, precision, and continuous monitoring of his own progress. But one thing was clear: he was onto something big. He sat down to document the day's breakthrough, fully aware that the world was about to change. The next morning, Elon awoke with a sense of purpose unlike any he had felt before. The pain in his leg had almost disappeared, leaving only the faintest trace of discomfort, a reminder that the body was still in recovery. Yet, this discomfort was no longer a barrier, it was merely a signal that the healing process was working. It felt like the body's way of saying, "You're on the right track." Elon, ever the visionary, had already started to plan his next steps. The idea that he could heal himself so quickly, and, more importantly, that he could potentially revolutionize the way people approached recovery, had ignited something within him. As he sipped his morning coffee, he reflected on how far he had come in just a short time. What had started as a personal quest for healing had evolved into a mission far greater than he had anticipated. He had always believed in pushing the boundaries of what was possible, whether that was launching a private space company or building electric vehicles that could outperform the competition. Now, he was faced with a new frontier: human health, healing, and recovery. Elon spent the morning analyzing the data he had gathered over the past few days. He tracked his leg's progress in minute detail, how far he could walk, how much pain he felt, and what foods or supplements had the most immediate effects. The results were astounding. What once seemed like a simple injury had now become the cornerstone of a much bigger picture. But Elon wasn't one to keep discoveries to himself, especially when they could change the world. He picked up his phone and dialed Dr. Evelyn's number. The conversation that followed was one that would set the stage for what was to come. "Elon, I'm thrilled by your progress," Dr. Evelyn said after hearing his update. "But I'm also very curious. I've been looking into your regimen, and I think you've stumbled upon something unique. You're not just speeding up your recovery, you're optimizing the body's natural healing mechanisms. We could take this further." Elon's excitement grew as she spoke. "What do you mean by taking it further?" "I mean, we can use what you've learned here to create a full program. A holistic approach to recovery, based on nutrient timing, supplements, and maybe even certain exercises. If we fine-tune it, we could take it beyond just speeding up healing, we could help people recover more fully, optimize their performance, and maintain long-term health. Think about the applications for athletes, the elderly, even people with chronic conditions." Elon's mind raced. He knew Dr. Evelyn was onto something. This wasn't just about a quick recovery from an injury. It was about creating a new paradigm in health and wellness. It was about harnessing the body's natural ability to heal, but with a scientific, systematic approach that could be scaled and used by people all over the world. "Let's do it," Elon said, his voice filled with conviction. "Let's make this the next big thing. I'll get to work on developing a framework for the program, and we'll need experts to help us refine it." They spent the next hour brainstorming. They discussed the key components of the program: nutrient timing, specific supplements, exercise regimens, sleep optimization, and even stress management techniques. Every part of the process had to be intentional, calculated, and synchronized to maximize the body's natural healing and performance capabilities. When Elon hung up the phone, he felt a surge of energy. He had always thrived in the unknown, always looked for ways to push the limits of possibility. This project was no different. It was a challenge, yes, but it was also an opportunity to help people in ways he had never considered before. With that, he immediately began researching the latest studies on circadian rhythms, healing processes, and cutting-edge supplements. He reached out to medical professionals, biohackers, and researchers who specialized in regeneration and health optimization. He knew that, as with his other ventures, the success of this program would rely on collaboration with the best minds in the field. Meanwhile, his personal recovery continued to surprise him. As the days passed, Elon's leg became stronger and more mobile. What had once been a debilitating injury was now something he barely thought about. It was as if the body, given the right tools, could heal itself at an astonishing rate. But this experiment was far from over. There was still much to learn, much to refine. And as Elon continued to push the boundaries of what was possible in his own recovery, he knew that this journey had the potential to impact far more than just his personal health. The world had always been fascinated by Elon Musk's ability to make the impossible seem possible. Now, he was on the cusp of proving that even the human body, with the right knowledge and the right science, could break through its own limitations. As the evening approached, Elon sat down at his desk and began drafting an outline for the new recovery program he and Dr. Evelyn had discussed. He was filled with excitement and anticipation. The future was unfolding before him, and he was ready to embrace it. By the time he finished, the outline was complete, a comprehensive, science-based program that combined the power of nutrition, exercise, sleep, and the body's natural rhythms. It was a bold vision, but it was one he knew could work. Elon, he muttered to himself as he reviewed the plan. This is going to change everything. With that, he sent the draft to Dr. Evelyn, eager to hear her thoughts. But even as he hit send, Elon knew there was no turning back. The path forward was clear, and it was a path that would take him, and countless others, into uncharted territory. And as he looked at the stars above, the same stars he had once aimed for with SpaceX, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about breaking records or reaching new heights in space, it was about breaking the boundaries of human potential, right here on Earth. The journey had only just begun. Elon couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the cusp of something revolutionary. His recovery from the leg injury had opened a door to a whole new world of possibilities. He had already mapped out a basic framework for his recovery program, but it was time to take things to the next level. It was time to test the program on a group of people, not just himself. He had always relied on data and results, not just theory. If this program could work for others the way it had worked for him, then he'd be on the verge of changing the entire field of recovery and health optimization. The first step was to assemble a test group. Elon reached out to a few trusted contacts, people who were experts in various fields, such as medicine, biohacking, and performance optimization. Some were athletes, some were doctors, and others were scientists who shared his enthusiasm for pushing the boundaries of human capability. Over the course of several days, the team was assembled. There were 10 participants in total, each with different backgrounds and different health issues. Some had chronic injuries, others were recovering from surgeries, and a few were simply looking to enhance their overall health and recovery speed. Each participant was provided with the same carefully tailored regimen, a combination of the foods and supplements Elon had found to be most effective in his own recovery, as well as a specific schedule designed to align with their circadian rhythms. The program also included exercises and meditation practices to support both the physical and mental aspects of healing. The goal was to see if the same rapid recovery that Elon experienced could be replicated across a range of people. Before starting the program, Elon took the time to meet with each participant individually. They went over their medical histories, their current physical conditions, and their goals for the experiment. Elon knew that each person would have their own challenges, but that diversity was part of the value. If this program could work for people with varying degrees of injury and health issues, then it could truly be something groundbreaking. The first test began with a detailed baseline assessment. Each participant went through a series of physical tests to measure their strength, flexibility, and overall health. They were also asked to fill out questionnaires about their energy levels, mental clarity, and how they felt physically and emotionally. When the baseline tests were complete, the real work began. Elon knew this wasn't going to be easy. The human body is complex, and there were no guarantees that this approach would work for everyone. But with the data from his own recovery, and the research he had been reading, he was optimistic. For the first few days, there were minor bumps along the way. Some of the participants had trouble adjusting to the timing of the nutrients, while others found the exercise routine to be more demanding than they anticipated. But as the days passed, the results began to show. One of the participants, a former Olympic athlete named Brian, had been struggling with a knee injury that had sidelined him for years. He had tried numerous treatments, from physical therapy to advanced injections, but nothing seemed to help. On the third day of the program, Brian reported that he could walk without pain for the first time in months. "I don't know what's happening," Brian said during one of the group check-ins, his voice full of disbelief. "But this feels different. I don't have that constant ache anymore. It's like I'm healing in a way I never thought was possible." Elon was excited but cautious. This was exactly the type of result he had been hoping for, but he needed more data. One success, while promising, wasn't enough to validate the program. He wanted to see if this was a trend, not just a fluke. Over the following week, more breakthroughs came. Sarah, a chronic back pain sufferer who had spent years trying different therapies with little success, began to notice a significant reduction in pain and increased mobility. Her improvements weren't as dramatic as Brian's, but they were still remarkable. "I woke up this morning and realized I hadn't thought about my back all day," Sarah said. "That's the first time in years that's happened. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not complaining." As the test group progressed, Elon felt a surge of excitement. The program was working, but it was working in ways he hadn't fully expected. The results were varied, but each participant was seeing tangible improvements in their health, mobility, and overall well-being. Some were recovering from injuries faster than they had ever hoped, while others were simply feeling better, with more energy and mental clarity than they had in years. The real breakthrough came when Jack, a 45-year-old man who had undergone multiple surgeries for a shoulder injury, reported that he had been able to lift weights for the first time in years without pain. Jack had been told by doctors that his shoulder would never fully recover, but here he was, lifting again. "This is crazy," Jack said during a group check-in, looking around at the others. "I've tried everything, surgery, physical therapy, all kinds of treatments. Nothing worked. But now I feel like I'm getting back to my old self." Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as he listened to the group share their successes. It wasn't just about healing injuries, it was about unlocking human potential in ways that had never been done before. This program was doing what conventional medicine had failed to do for so long. It was helping people recover faster, more effectively, and in a more natural way. After a week of results that far exceeded his expectations, Elon sat down with Dr. Evelyn to discuss their next steps. The data was promising, but they both agreed that they needed more time to refine the program and gather additional insights. They also knew that this wasn't just about testing a single program, it was about developing a new field of science, one that focused on optimizing the human body's natural healing abilities. "Elon, this is incredible," Dr. Evelyn said as they reviewed the data. "We're seeing results that no one has ever seen before, and this could change everything. But we need to keep refining it. If we get it right, we could be looking at a complete overhaul of how the world approaches health and recovery." Elon nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. This was just the beginning. He knew they had something special on their hands. But there was still much to do, more testing, more data to collect, and more lives to improve. As the evening approached, Elon reflected on how far he had come. The journey that had started with a personal injury was now something much greater. The potential to change the way the world approached healing was within reach. He wasn't just healing himself anymore, he was healing others, pushing the boundaries of human potential, and creating something that could redefine the future of medicine. And he was just getting started. Elon sat back in his chair, a half-empty mug of coffee resting on the desk beside him. The excitement of the previous days had settled into a quiet, but determined, focus. The program was working, more than he had expected, but there was still a major hurdle ahead of him. It wasn't enough to help a small test group, the true challenge was scaling the program. How could he bring this healing approach to the masses? To the people who needed it the most? Elon's mind was already racing through ideas as he stared out the window of his office at Tesla's headquarters. It had always been the same way with his ventures: start small, make it work, then expand rapidly. But this time, it felt different. This wasn't about creating a new product or technology, it was about changing the very way people approached their health. He knew scaling a program like this would be no small feat. The medical field, especially when it came to recovery and healing, was fraught with regulations, skepticism, and a deep-rooted resistance to new ideas. Even with the promising results from his test group, there were still people who would dismiss this as another fad. Elon knew the solution was simple: data. He had to gather more data, and it had to be irrefutable. If the data proved this method could work on a global scale, then it would be harder for the medical community to ignore. He turned his attention to the next step: research. There was a whole world of studies he needed to delve into, from circadian rhythms to cellular regeneration to the latest advances in supplements and nutrients. This was no longer just a personal quest, it was a scientific mission. To help with this, Elon expanded his team. He brought in a few experts in biohacking, human physiology, and data analytics. They would be tasked with refining the program further and conducting deeper research into the specifics of how each component contributed to the healing process. They also began collaborating with various universities and medical institutions that had the credibility to validate the program's effects on a larger scale. But even as the team worked around the clock, Elon couldn't ignore the constant pressure he felt from the outside world. The media was starting to catch on. Stories about his leg recovery were circulating, with many calling it the Elon Musk method. Some referring to it as the next breakthrough in human health. This type of attention brought both opportunity and risk. There were articles praising his ingenuity, but there were also the inevitable detractors, doctors questioning the validity of his approach, journalists skeptical about the program's long-term efficacy. In some ways, the attention only fueled Elon's determination. He had always been accustomed to doubters and naysayers. They were part of the process, part of what drove him to prove them wrong. As the weeks passed, the program continued to evolve. Elon's team introduced new variables, adding specific nutrients and refining the timing of meals and exercise to better align with the body's natural cycles. They also incorporated more personalized elements based on each individual's unique genetic makeup. It was a more holistic approach, one that accounted for the fact that no two bodies are the same. But while the test group was progressing, scaling the program to a global level still seemed like a distant dream. Elon knew that to truly make an impact, he needed to take the next step. He needed to partner with someone who could help bring the program to the mainstream. After much deliberation, Elon reached out to Dr. Evelyn with an idea. "Evelyn, I think we need to take this beyond just our small team. We need someone who can help us get this to the people, someone with the infrastructure and the credibility to give this the traction it needs." Evelyn thought for a moment before responding. "You're talking about a big player in the health industry?" "Exactly," Elon replied. "Think of someone who already has a massive platform, someone whose brand is trusted by millions. I'm thinking of someone like Tony Robbins or Dr. Mark Hyman. If we could partner with someone like that, they could help us break through the noise and get this program into the hands of the people who need it most." Elon knew that partnering with a well-known figure could lend the program the legitimacy it needed to gain traction. But the question was, who would be the right fit? He needed someone whose philosophy aligned with the program, someone who wasn't just about selling products but genuinely believed in improving people's lives. The search for the right partner began, and Elon's team dove into research, scouring social media platforms, speaking with health experts, and reaching out to potential collaborators. It took time, but soon enough, they identified the perfect candidate, Dr. Sarah Johnson, a renowned functional medicine doctor with a large following in the wellness community. Dr. Johnson's approach to health aligned perfectly with Elon's vision. She believed in a holistic, science-backed approach to healing, and she had spent years advocating for natural recovery methods. Elon reached out to Dr. Johnson with the idea of a partnership. It was a risk, but Elon knew that risk was often a necessary part of innovation. The conversation went well, and soon they were discussing how they could combine their knowledge to create a global platform for recovery and health optimization. The partnership would allow them to combine Elon's groundbreaking data and Dr. Johnson's credibility in the medical community to create a program that could revolutionize the way the world thought about health. Together, they could amplify the reach of the program and get it into the hands of people worldwide. The next step was to conduct larger-scale clinical trials. The program had already shown promising results in a small group of individuals, but to gain wider acceptance, they needed to prove it could work on a diverse population, across different ages, backgrounds, and health conditions. These trials would provide the data that could make the program irrefutable. As the trials began, Elon, Dr. Johnson, and the team worked tirelessly to monitor the progress. The results were even more impressive than they had hoped. People were not just recovering faster, they were healing in ways they hadn't thought possible. Chronic pain, stiffness, fatigue, conditions that had plagued many of the participants for years, were beginning to disappear. The data began to flood in, and the evidence was overwhelming. The program was working. People were getting stronger, faster, and healthier. Word began to spread, and the media took notice once again. This time, however, it wasn't just skepticism, it was excitement. Elon sat back in his chair, his mind racing with possibilities. This was it, the moment he had been working toward. He wasn't just healing himself anymore, he was changing the way the world viewed health. The program was ready to scale. The first phase was complete. And with the right partnerships, the right data, and a global platform, Elon was about to launch something that would impact millions of lives, and maybe even change the future of medicine itself. But he knew this was just the beginning. The real work was only getting started. As the trials wrapped up, Elon couldn't help but smile. He was on the edge of something massive. Something world-changing. And he wasn't about to stop now. Elon stood in front of a large whiteboard in his office, markers in hand, as he stared at the plan for the program's global launch. The last few months had been a whirlwind. The collaboration with Dr. Sarah Johnson had paid off, and now, with the backing of trusted medical professionals and scientists, they were ready to roll out the program to the public. This wasn't just another product launch for Elon. This was a chance to make history, to change how the world approached health and recovery. The early trials had been overwhelmingly successful. The data was in, and it was undeniable. People were recovering faster, experiencing less pain, and regaining strength in record time. They were healing their bodies in ways that traditional medicine had long told them were impossible. The program was more than just a recovery plan, it was a new approach to human potential. But as the day of the launch grew nearer, Elon felt the familiar weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He wasn't just launching a new business, he was challenging the status quo. The world wasn't always ready for change, especially in an area as ingrained in tradition as health and medicine. "Are we ready?" Elon asked, his voice firm as he addressed his team, which had gathered in the conference room. Dr. Johnson, his team of data analysts, biohacking experts, and a few key marketing people were all present. "We're more than ready, Dr. Johnson replied confidently, her tone reflecting the months of hard work that had gone into this. "We've gathered the data, we've got the right people on board, and we've tested this on a diverse group of individuals. This program is going to work for anyone who tries it. We've got the proof." Elon nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead. He knew the launch wouldn't be without its challenges. There would be critics, there would be skeptics, and there would be people who wanted to tear down the program because it was something new, something that didn't fit neatly into the existing healthcare system. But that wasn't something Elon feared. If anything, it motivated him more. "We're not just selling a product," Elon continued, pacing back and forth in front of the group. "We're giving people back their lives. This isn't about profits or accolades. It's about changing the way people think about healing. If we get this right, we could change the way people approach their health forever." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of Elon's words settling in. The team understood the gravity of the moment. They were on the verge of something monumental. Elon turned back to the whiteboard, where the launch plan was written in large, bold letters. It wasn't just about a product release, it was about an entire movement. They would target social media influencers, key medical professionals, athletes, and wellness communities. They'd leverage online platforms, video content, and partnerships with major brands to get the word out. "I've been thinking about the launch event," Elon said, taking a step toward the board. "We need something big. Something that will get people's attention, show them that this is more than just another fad." Dr. Johnson's eyes lit up. "What do you have in mind?" Elon paused for a moment before a grin spread across his face. "A live demonstration." The room went quiet, and everyone looked at him, unsure whether he was serious. But Elon wasn't joking. The idea was bold, perhaps even a bit reckless, but it was exactly what he had done before. With the Tesla launches, with SpaceX, he had always done things that hadn't been done before. Now, it was time to take that same approach to the world of health. "We'll take someone who has been through the program, someone who's experienced the recovery firsthand, and we'll have them demonstrate what's possible after following this regimen," Elon said. "But not just anyone. It should be someone with a story, someone the world can relate to." Dr. Johnson's face lit up. "I know just the person." Elon looked at her, intrigued. "Who?" "A former professional athlete," she said, pulling up a profile on her tablet. "Her name's Emily Carter. She was a tennis champion in her youth, but she sustained a career-ending injury to her knee. She's been living with chronic pain ever since, and nothing conventional has worked for her. She was part of our test group and has had incredible results. She's the perfect example of how transformative this program can be." Elon nodded thoughtfully. Emily's story was exactly what they needed. She had been a champion, brought low by an injury, and now, with the program's help, she was on the road to recovery. If she could walk out on stage and show the world how far she had come, it would have a huge impact. "Let's make it happen," Elon said with conviction. "We'll bring her in, and we'll make the live demonstration something people won't forget." The days leading up to the launch were a blur of activity. There were final preparations for the event, social media campaigns to schedule, and last-minute tweaks to the program's materials. Elon barely slept, consumed by the sheer magnitude of what was ahead. He knew that the launch would make or break the program. If it went well, the doors would open to millions of people who would benefit from what they had created. If it didn't, all the work they had put in might not amount to much more than a footnote in the history of health and wellness. Finally, the day arrived. The launch event was held in a sleek, modern auditorium that had been set up with state-of-the-art technology. Elon, Dr. Johnson, Emily Carter, and the rest of the team were ready. The event would be streamed live, with millions of people watching from around the world. It wasn't just about the product, it was about the movement. Elon walked onto the stage, his usual calm demeanor masking the excitement bubbling inside. The audience, both in person and online, waited in anticipation. This was the moment when everything would change. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elon began, his voice steady but charged with energy, "we're about to show you something that's going to change the way you think about health, recovery, and human potential. What you're about to see is not just a new program, it's a new way of living." He turned to Emily, who was standing beside him. She looked strong, confident, and ready to share her story. "Emily, would you like to tell us about your journey?" Emily smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "I was a tennis player. I spent my entire life on the court. But after an injury, everything changed. I couldn't play anymore, and the pain was constant. I tried everything, surgery, physical therapy, you name it. But nothing worked. Then I found this program." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "I couldn't believe how quickly I started to feel better. The pain started to fade. My strength came back. I'm walking without crutches. I'm doing things I thought I'd never do again." The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Elon turned to the screen behind him, where images of Emily's recovery journey were displayed. The transformation was undeniable. "Now, we want to show you what's possible," Elon said, motioning toward the stage. With that, Emily took a few steps forward, demonstrating her newfound mobility. The crowd erupted in applause. People were stunned. What they were seeing was real. "This is only the beginning," Elon said, his voice filled with purpose. "We're here to change the future of recovery, health, and human potential. And today marks the first day of that change." The live stream numbers skyrocketed as millions of viewers tuned in from across the globe. The message was clear: this program wasn't just a quick fix, it was a new way of living, a new approach to health. And people were listening. The launch had been a success. The program was ready to go global, and the world was ready to hear about it. For Elon Musk, this wasn't just another venture. It was the start of a revolution. And it had only just begun. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The aftermath of the launch event was nothing short of electric. The following days were filled with an overwhelming outpouring of support, media coverage, and interest from around the globe. Social media exploded with posts, hashtags, and videos, as thousands of people shared their own stories and experiences with the program. The hashtag Elon Musk method was trending worldwide, and it was clear that the movement Elon had ignited was just beginning to take shape. In the following week, the program's website received millions of hits. Thousands of people signed up for the first phase of the global rollout, eager to experience the life-changing recovery that Elon and his team had promised. Testimonials flooded in from people across different walks of life: athletes, office workers, seniors, and even parents of children who had struggled with chronic conditions for years. The diversity of those eager to try the program proved that there was a universal appeal to what Elon had created. But even with the success of the launch, Elon knew there was still a long road ahead. The excitement was palpable, but now came the hard part: sustaining the momentum, scaling the program, and proving its results on a long-term basis. He sat in a meeting with Dr. Johnson, his head of data analytics, and a few other key team members. It was time to figure out how they would handle the next phase. With millions signing up, the logistics of the program needed to be streamlined. From personalized health assessments to meal plans and exercise regimens, every detail had to be flawless. "We've got an incredible amount of data coming in already," Dr. Johnson said, pointing to the large screen in front of her. "The program is working for people in ways we didn't even expect. The feedback is overwhelmingly positive. But we need to ensure we can continue to offer personalized results, especially as we scale." Elon nodded, his mind already racing ahead. This wasn't just about making sure the program worked on a small scale. It was about optimizing it for thousands, maybe millions, of people. They had to make sure the platform could adapt to each individual's needs, from their unique body chemistry to their lifestyle. "We need AI-driven customization," Elon said, turning to his lead software engineer. "Let's integrate machine learning so that the program can evolve for each individual. We want real-time data, constant feedback loops. We should be able to monitor progress and make adjustments automatically, based on the user's unique conditions." The team immediately began mapping out the new structure. Elon's idea was simple yet ambitious: the program needed to be self-sustaining, intuitive, and deeply personalized. They would use artificial intelligence to analyze each user's progress and provide ongoing adjustments to nutrition, exercise, and rest cycles. This would ensure that no matter where people started from, they would continue to make gains, and the results would be sustainable over time. With this new layer of customization in place, Elon was feeling more confident. The program was no longer just a set of instructions, it was a dynamic system, continuously adjusting to its users' needs. This was the key to turning a good idea into a lasting legacy. However, despite the optimism surrounding the project, there were still those who doubted. Critics began to question the long-term validity of the program. Was it truly a breakthrough, or just another trendy wellness program? Could it really work for everyone, or was it just a fluke that worked for a few lucky individuals? These questions persisted, and while Elon didn't mind criticism, it did give him pause. He knew that to truly make a difference, they would need scientific validation, data that proved the program wasn't just effective, but that it was sustainable and beneficial in the long run. So, while the program continued to grow rapidly, Elon quietly began to work on the next step: formal partnerships with major health institutions and universities for clinical trials that could validate the results on a grand scale. It was during one of his late-night sessions that Elon got an unexpected call. It was from Dr. Gregory Simmons, a renowned orthopedist and sports medicine doctor who had been following the program closely since the launch. "Elon," Dr. Simmons began, his voice filled with urgency, "I've been looking at the data you've collected, and I have to say, I'm impressed. But we need to take this to the next level. If you want this to be taken seriously in the medical community, you need peer-reviewed clinical trials, multi-center studies. We need evidence that proves this isn't just an anomaly." Elon paused for a moment, letting the weight of the suggestion settle in. He had been thinking the same thing, but hearing it from someone with Dr. Simmons' reputation made it feel more urgent. "I agree," Elon said finally. "We've got the early success, but we need to prove this at a larger scale, across different demographics and clinical settings. Let's get it done." Dr. Simmons continued, "I can help you connect with some of the top research institutions. I have access to hospitals that are willing to run large-scale trials with you. This could be the real tipping point for your program." "Perfect," Elon replied. "Let's move quickly. I'll start working with my team to prepare the necessary data and protocols. We need this to be thorough." That conversation marked a turning point. Elon's plan had always been to disrupt industries, and now it seemed that health and medicine were next on his agenda. He wasn't content with just changing the way people thought about recovery, he wanted to make the program scientifically irrefutable. He wanted a legacy, not just for him, but for everyone who had suffered from pain and injury. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. The team worked relentlessly on finalizing the details of the clinical trials, including securing partnerships with top universities and research centers. Elon and Dr. Simmons formed a coalition of doctors, scientists, and health professionals who could guide the trials and ensure the integrity of the data. As the trials were prepared, Elon turned his attention to the program's outreach. They needed to ensure that the message reached as many people as possible. He began investing in marketing campaigns aimed at educating people about the benefits of the program, the science behind it, and the success stories of those who had already recovered. He even began talking about it at some of his more public events, subtly weaving the program into his broader vision of innovation and human progress. Despite the massive success of the launch and the growing buzz, the true test would come with the scientific trials. Elon knew that only then would the world see whether this program could truly change the future of health and recovery, or if it would be just another flash in the pan. As he sat at his desk, going over trial protocols late one evening, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This wasn't just about healing legs and fixing injuries anymore, it was about creating a new paradigm for human health. And he was right in the middle of it. The world was watching, and he was determined to prove that the impossible was possible. The stage was set for the next phase of the revolution. Months passed, and the program, now dubbed the Elon Musk Recovery Protocol, continued to make waves around the world. People were eager to try it, and the testimonials kept pouring in. But Elon was always a man of action, not just words. The buzz surrounding the program was exciting, but he knew that its real value lay in the science behind it. If they were going to make this program a standard, they needed the proof. The moment had arrived. The clinical trials were set to begin. Elon stood in front of a large conference table, surrounded by leading doctors, researchers, and medical professionals. They had gathered from top universities, hospitals, and healthcare institutions. It was a star-studded group of minds, each one tasked with verifying the data and ensuring the program met the highest scientific standards. "We're ready," Elon said, looking around the room at the faces of the team. "The first trial phase will involve over 500 participants. We've designed it to cover a wide range of demographics, people with different ages, backgrounds, and health conditions. This will give us the most comprehensive data possible. Dr. Simmons, the orthopedist who had become one of Elon's key allies in the medical community, stood up. The goal here isn't just to prove that this program works, it's to understand why it works. We'll be examining everything, from muscle regeneration to pain reduction to overall strength improvement. This isn't just about anecdotes. We want empirical evidence. Elon nodded, his mind already in motion. He'd built the program with his vision of a healthier, more resilient world, but now he had to ensure that the world would take it seriously. The data would have to be flawless. The trials were divided into several stages, each more demanding than the last. Participants would undergo rigorous assessments before starting the program, documenting their baseline strength, mobility, and pain levels. Then, after undergoing the program for a set period, they would be retested. The results would be compared to the baseline, and any improvements would be documented. As the first round of participants began their journey through the protocol, the team watched closely. Researchers collected data constantly, analyzing each individual's response to the program. The most surprising results came from those who had been dealing with chronic pain for years. Many of them reported a dramatic reduction in discomfort after just a few weeks. One participant, a former military veteran named Thomas, had been living with a bad knee for over a decade. He tried everything, surgery, physical therapy, you name it. Nothing had worked. Yet, after only 2 weeks of following the program, he was able to climb stairs without pain for the first time in years. His story spread like wildfire within the trial group, and soon, others were finding similar results. Dr. Simmons and the team of researchers were astonished by the results, but they knew they had to remain skeptical. While the improvements were promising, they needed more data. They needed to understand why this was happening and whether these results could be replicated on a larger scale. Meanwhile, Elon remained focused, checking in on the progress every day. He wasn't content with just positive results. He needed this program to be scalable, accessible, and, most importantly, sustainable. If it worked for a few people but didn't work in the long run, then it wouldn't be enough. He met with Dr. Johnson one evening to discuss the status of the trial. The feedback from the participants is overwhelmingly positive, she said, tapping through her tablet. People are feeling stronger. Less pain. They're getting their lives back. But we've still got to analyze the data from a clinical perspective. The science behind it must hold up. I know, Elon replied, leaning forward. But the results are starting to speak for themselves. We need to get the science to match what people are experiencing. That's how we'll change the game. Dr. Johnson nodded. I agree. We'll need to collaborate with the researchers at the institutions conducting the trials to ensure that we're interpreting the data correctly. One of the key components of the program that had piqued the researchers' interest was the food-based recovery protocol. The magic food, as people had begun to call it, was a blend of ingredients designed to support the body's regenerative processes. The blend of vitamins, minerals, and amino acids worked in tandem with the workout and stretching routines, creating a holistic approach that optimized the body's natural healing mechanisms. The trial participants had followed this diet regimen, and the results were startling. But the real breakthrough came when they started looking at the biochemical data. A few weeks into the trial, a particularly interesting result surfaced. The levels of certain key markers in the blood, such as collagen synthesis and muscle regeneration proteins, had shown significant improvements in participants who followed the program to the letter. It was clear now, the combination of dietary adjustments and targeted physical exercises was providing the necessary stimuli to promote rapid recovery. The evidence was mounting. But the challenges weren't over. Even as the clinical trial results showed impressive benefits, Elon and his team were mindful of the fact that they were now in the public spotlight. Media outlets were eager to talk about the program, but they wanted more than just personal stories, they wanted hard science. Elon knew the stakes. If they could present definitive, peer-reviewed research showing that the program worked in a way that went beyond the anecdotal, they would have a game-changer on their hands. That was the next hurdle. In the weeks that followed, as the clinical trials continued to unfold, Elon's focus intensified. He met with top scientists and medical professionals from various backgrounds to discuss the growing body of evidence. They had to ensure that the program could be implemented on a global scale, particularly in places where access to traditional healthcare options was limited. He wanted the program to be something that could be used by anyone, anywhere. Despite the initial success, Elon understood the gravity of what was at stake. This wasn't just about revolutionizing health recovery, it was about changing how people saw themselves. He knew that once the program's results were fully verified and the trials concluded, the medical community would be forced to reconsider what was possible. Traditional medicine had long dominated, but Elon was on the verge of shifting the paradigm. As the trials moved into their final stages, the data continued to pile up. The program's results were becoming more and more irrefutable. There were still hurdles to overcome, but Elon knew they were on the right path. Soon, the world would see the culmination of all their hard work. The future of health and recovery was no longer just a dream, it was a reality. And Elon Musk, once again, was poised to change the world. As the clinical trials neared their conclusion, the momentum behind the Elon Musk recovery protocol surged to unprecedented levels. The results were undeniable, and word of the program's success was beginning to spread beyond the research community. Soon, it wasn't just the medical world that was taking notice, governments, corporations, and ordinary people around the globe were all intrigued by what Elon had set in motion. The media coverage reached new heights. Leading news outlets covered the progress of the trials, highlighting the unprecedented recovery rates and improvements in quality of life for participants. Major television networks ran segments interviewing doctors, athletes, and patients who had experienced miraculous results. Social media was abuzz with real-time updates, and the hashtag Elon Musk recovery continued to dominate headlines. Elon watched this all unfold from his office in SpaceX headquarters. He couldn't help but feel a mixture of pride and anticipation. The program had already exceeded his expectations, but he knew that it was just the beginning. This wasn't merely a successful health program, it was the start of something much bigger, an entirely new approach to human recovery and resilience. But with this global attention came new pressures. The program's initial success was astounding, but Elon understood that in order to truly transform the world, they needed to expand its reach. This wasn't going to be a niche product, it had to be universal, accessible, and sustainable for everyone, from the young to the elderly, from athletes to those who had never set foot in a gym. Elon and his team began to discuss what would come next. There was a growing demand for the program to be more widely available. They needed to scale it quickly, but also responsibly. The challenge was not just delivering the program's benefits to more people, but ensuring that each individual received the customized, evidence-based care they deserved. Elon called for a meeting with his closest advisors. Dr. Simmons, who had been working closely on the trials, was among those present. Elon's team was a mixture of scientists, business leaders, engineers, and medical professionals. Together, they had created the foundation for a movement that could change the health and wellness industry forever. "We've got proof," Elon said as he began the meeting. "Now we need to take this global. We need to integrate with existing healthcare systems in countries all over the world. But we also need to ensure that we maintain the core principles of the program: personalized care, scientific validity, and sustainability." Dr. Simmons nodded. "The data is compelling. But the next step isn't just to spread it everywhere. We need to work with local healthcare providers, insurance companies, and even governments. There are regulatory hurdles to overcome, especially if we're going to scale internationally." Elon acknowledged the challenge, but his mind was already racing. "We'll do that. We need to make sure the program is adaptable to different healthcare environments. We'll provide the framework, and then we'll partner with local experts to make it work in their regions. The key is flexibility." The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Elon and his team expanded their operations to create partnerships with hospitals, clinics, and wellness centers across the globe. They began negotiations with insurance companies to make the program available as part of health coverage, ensuring that it would be accessible to people from all walks of life. This was no longer just a high-end wellness product, it was a vital part of global health infrastructure. At the same time, Elon pushed for more integration with existing medical research. He wasn't content with just having a few studies backing the program. He wanted independent research groups from all over the world to examine the protocol, to test it, and to validate its results. Elon's mission was clear: he didn't want just to change the recovery game, he wanted to revolutionize healthcare as a whole. One of the most ambitious plans was the development of a mobile app that would allow people to access the program from anywhere. This app would guide users through every step of their recovery journey, providing personalized meal plans, workout routines, and continuous progress tracking. For the first time, someone living in a remote village would have the same access to cutting-edge recovery science as a professional athlete in New York City. Elon knew that technology would play a crucial role in democratizing this revolution. They would use artificial intelligence to customize each participant's experience in real time, ensuring that each individual's recovery journey was optimized based on their unique needs and goals. The app would also connect users to a global community of people who were going through similar experiences, creating an unprecedented sense of support and connection. As the mobile app neared its beta testing phase, Elon turned his attention to another key component of the program: education. While the program's results were groundbreaking, he knew that it was just as important to educate people about the science behind it. People needed to understand why it worked, not just that it worked. He began collaborating with renowned educators and scientists to create an online platform where anyone could learn about the principles behind the program, from muscle regeneration to the role of nutrition in recovery. This platform would offer free access to high-quality, scientifically backed educational content. It was another way for Elon to make sure that the program wasn't just a quick fix, it was a long-term solution, supported by real knowledge and understanding. Around the same time, the first wave of results from the clinical trials were published in major medical journals. The data was irrefutable: the program was not only effective, but it was sustainable. The results of those who followed the protocol consistently showed a dramatic reduction in pain, increased muscle strength, and a marked improvement in overall well-being. Elon, never one for fanfare, quietly reflected on the achievement. It was the kind of success that was both exhilarating and humbling. But he couldn't afford to rest. This was only the beginning. As the program expanded, so did the challenges. The logistics of scaling it to millions of people were complex. How could they manage the global demand while maintaining the program's quality and effectiveness? Elon knew that the answer lay in both technology and community. If they could empower individuals to take control of their own health and recovery, they could create a global network of people working together to improve their lives. Through partnerships with local health organizations, Elon and his team launched the first wave of international programs. From Europe to Asia to Africa, the protocol began to spread. In some regions, there were immediate hurdles: cultural differences, language barriers, and varying healthcare systems. But each obstacle was met with innovation and adaptation. Slowly but surely, the program was becoming a global movement. And as it spread across the world, so did the stories of transformation. In places where healthcare had always been a luxury, people began to see dramatic improvements in their quality of life. A mother in Kenya was able to regain mobility after an injury that had kept her bedridden for years. A businessman in Tokyo, once sidelined by chronic pain, was able to return to his job after following the program for just a few weeks. A group of elderly women in Spain found new energy and vitality, reclaiming the strength they had lost over decades. The Elon Musk Recovery Protocol was no longer just a program, it was a global movement, empowering people everywhere to take control of their health and recovery. And for Elon, that was just the beginning. The world had changed, and he was leading the charge. With the success of the Elon Musk Recovery Protocol, the world had taken notice. Yet, as with any major shift in industry or societal norms, there were those who resisted. No revolutionary idea came without its detractors, and Elon knew that it was only a matter of time before he faced pushback. The question was no longer whether the program could change lives, it was how the world would respond to such a profound challenge to the status quo. Elon had always known that disruption was a double-edged sword. As the program continued to gain momentum, a coalition of traditional medical professionals, pharmaceutical companies, and even fitness industry giants began to push back. Their concerns varied, but one thing was clear: they didn't want to see a food-based, scientifically backed program redefine how recovery and healthcare were approached. The most vocal critic came in the form of Dr. Alan Phillips, a renowned orthopedic surgeon who had built his career on invasive surgeries and pharmaceutical treatments. He wasn't just dismissive of the program, he was outright hostile. At a press conference discussing new developments in his research, Dr. Phillips took aim at the recovery protocol. This so-called magic food, and the idea that people can bypass decades of tried-and-true medical practices in favor of a few trendy exercises and a diet plan, is absurd. We've spent years researching, refining, and perfecting medical treatments that actually work. To think that a social media influencer and a tech billionaire can suddenly reinvent recovery is dangerous. Elon didn't respond immediately. He had learned over the years that when it came to critics, especially those with personal or financial stakes in the old way of doing things, responding in anger or haste often fueled the fire. Instead, he allowed time for the statements to sink in, watching the public's reaction to the controversy that began to unfold. This wasn't a surprise, he expected it. But it was time to address the growing tension. Elon called for a live-stream debate, one where he would directly address the scientific concerns raised by Dr. Phillips and others like him. He wasn't going to let anyone define the narrative for him. If they were going to challenge his vision, he would meet them head-on. Armed with facts, data, and the results from thousands of satisfied participants. The debate was set for a few weeks later, and the anticipation was palpable. Social media erupted, with supporters of the recovery protocol rallying behind Elon. They shared their personal experiences with the program, emphasizing its life-changing impact. The hashtag recovery revolution began trending globally, with stories of real transformation flooding the internet. On the other hand, Dr. Phillips and his supporters used their platforms to spread fear. They warned that embracing an unproven alternative to medical care was reckless, that this program was no more than a marketing ploy, and that people were being misled by fancy technology and unverified claims. The day of the debate arrived, and it was broadcast live to millions around the world. Elon sat calmly at the debate table, dressed in a simple, dark suit, his posture relaxed but his mind focused. Dr. Phillips, in contrast, wore a stern expression as he adjusted his glasses and prepared to speak. The atmosphere was charged with tension as each side prepared to defend their position. The moderator began by introducing the two participants and outlining the debate's objectives, to discuss the effectiveness of the recovery protocol versus traditional methods of treatment and recovery. Dr. Phillips opened with his argument. There is no question that certain treatments and interventions work. Surgery, physical therapy, and medication have saved countless lives and alleviated untold amounts of pain. But now we have a tech entrepreneur who's claimed to revolutionize medicine without the proper clinical trials or rigorous testing. How can we trust that this program is anything more than a marketing scheme? Elon responded without hesitation, the program is based on data. Real-world data. We've conducted extensive clinical trials, published in top-tier medical journals, showing its efficacy. The people who followed the program have experienced tangible improvements in strength, mobility, and pain relief. This isn't about speculation, it's about results. Dr. Phillips shot back, but those are just anecdotes. What we need are double-blind, placebo-controlled studies with a significant sample size. You can't just build a global health protocol based on a few testimonials. Elon smiled slightly. Actually, that's exactly what we did. The trials you're referring to are in progress. The data is being collected and analyzed, and we're publishing it as we go. And the results so far have been outstanding. But beyond that, we're not just focusing on the outcomes. We're looking at the underlying biology, the mechanisms at play, collagen production, muscle regeneration, inflammation reduction. This is a holistic, scientific approach, not a quick fix. The back and forth continued for hours, each side presenting their case. Dr. Phillips argued the benefits of traditional medical procedures, while Elon emphasized the importance of a more natural, food-based recovery that utilized the body's innate abilities. They discussed everything from the role of pharmaceuticals in recovery to the long-term sustainability of different methods. As the debate neared its end, the moderator asked a final question. Elon, what would you say to those who argue that your program is just another fad, a trend that will fade as quickly as it appeared? Elon leaned forward, his gaze steady and determined. I'd say this, we're already seeing real-world results that are undeniable. People are regaining strength, mobility, and vitality after injuries, surgeries, and chronic conditions that they thought they'd never recover from. This isn't a fad. This is a new way forward. A way that challenges the status quo and gives people more control over their own health. It's not about replacing traditional medicine, it's about providing an additional tool, one that's accessible, sustainable, and based on the latest science. We're offering people the choice to take their health into their own hands. Dr. Phillips had no immediate reply. The weight of Elon's argument hung in the air, and the audience seemed to feel it. The debate ended, and the world waited for the aftermath. In the days that followed, social media exploded with reactions. There were still critics, of course, but the overwhelming majority of the responses were supportive. The fact that Elon had addressed the concerns directly, backed by scientific data and a calm, composed demeanor, had won him significant respect, even among some of his detractors. The debate had not just been a battle of words, it had been a public demonstration of confidence in the program's validity. And as a result, more and more people started to ask themselves the fundamental question, what if this really could work? Even Dr. Phillips, though maintaining his skepticism, began quietly acknowledging the strength of the program's results. He wasn't ready to endorse it, yet. But it was clear that he was beginning to see it as a legitimate contender in the world of recovery. For Elon, the resistance only confirmed that he was on the right path. Disruption wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't without its challenges. But if there was one thing Elon Musk knew for sure, it was that the world would change, whether people liked it or not. And in the end, the truth would win. The global movement was no longer just about recovery, it was about redefining what was possible in human health. And no amount of resistance could slow it down. As the weeks passed following the public debate, Elon felt the weight of the world's eyes on him. The program's initial success had been overwhelming, but now came the most critical phase, proving that this wasn't just a temporary solution, but a lasting revolution in the world of health and recovery. Elon had always thrived under pressure, but this time was different. This wasn't about launching a product or securing a business deal. It was about something much deeper. This was about creating a new paradigm for health, one that could potentially change the lives of millions, even billions, of people. But that kind of shift took time. Time to prove that it wasn't just a flash in the pan, a trend that would fade away as quickly as it had arrived. He called for a series of long-term studies to track participants who had followed the program for extended periods, 6 months, 1 year, and even longer. The data collected in these studies would be pivotal in determining whether the program could truly deliver sustainable results. At the same time, he reached out to experts in various fields, nutritionists, physiologists, gerontologists, and even psychologists, to further refine the protocol. He knew that to make this program truly universal, it needed to be flexible enough to work for anyone, no matter their age, physical condition, or personal circumstances. But not all feedback was positive. As the program grew in popularity, its critics also became more vocal. A handful of influential medical professionals began challenging the long-term effects of the program, citing concerns about over-reliance on a food-based recovery system without sufficient oversight from medical professionals. They questioned whether the program could be universally applied, and whether it might even cause harm to individuals who weren't following it correctly. Elon didn't shy away from the criticisms. Instead, he leaned into them. He knew that no groundbreaking idea ever went without scrutiny. But as always, his response was rooted in science. "We've got the data," Elon said during a press conference. "The people who followed the protocol for extended periods of time are seeing life-changing results that traditional medicine hasn't been able to deliver. We're not asking people to replace their doctors. We're offering a complementary approach that works in tandem with other treatments. This is about giving people more options and empowering them to take control of their recovery." The medical community, however, remained divided. Some embraced the idea, seeing it as an opportunity to expand the options available to patients. Others, particularly those invested in the status quo, remained skeptical. They continued to warn the public about the dangers of unproven methods, even as the program's results were validated by thousands of testimonials and clinical trials. It was a battle of ideologies as much as it was a battle of facts. Elon was convinced that the future of health didn't lie solely in hospitals and pharmaceuticals. It was in empowering individuals to take their health into their own hands. And the data was on his side. People were experiencing dramatic improvements. People were getting better. Despite the resistance, the program continued to grow. It was no longer just a product, it was a movement. People who had once felt hopeless, who had been told by doctors that they would never recover from injuries or debilitating conditions, were now walking, running, and thriving in ways they hadn't thought possible. The program had given them back not just their strength, but their confidence. As more countries began to integrate the recovery protocol into their healthcare systems, some surprising partnerships began to form. Insurance companies, which had initially balked at the idea of covering alternative treatments, started seeing the economic potential. The program wasn't just effective for individuals, it was cost-effective for healthcare systems too. By reducing the need for expensive surgeries, long-term treatments, and hospital visits, the program proved to be an investment rather than an expense. Elon's team had worked tirelessly to develop an infrastructure that could scale globally while maintaining the program's effectiveness. They implemented new training programs for healthcare professionals, ensuring that doctors, physical therapists, and other practitioners could incorporate the protocol into their treatment regimens. The goal was never to replace traditional healthcare but to offer an alternative that could complement and enhance it. One of the most exciting developments was the formation of a global network of recovery centers. These centers, located in major cities around the world, would provide in-person support for those who needed it, blending the best of technology and human care. They would use AI-driven diagnostic tools to assess each patient's needs, create personalized recovery plans, and offer coaching, nutrition, and fitness programs tailored to the individual. The global network would allow people to access the program in person, if they wanted, while still maintaining the flexibility of remote options. With this infrastructure in place, Elon felt confident that the program could withstand the test of time. But there was still one challenge left to address: what would happen when the novelty wore off? Would the program continue to be effective in the long term, or would it eventually be relegated to the same category as other health fads that had come and gone? He knew that in order to truly transform the world, the program had to do more than just offer short-term solutions. It had to become a way of life, a fundamental shift in how people approached their health and well-being. The program needed to teach people not just how to recover, but how to maintain their strength and vitality for the long haul. It needed to instill a culture of continuous self-care. Elon had always been a visionary, and he knew that the only way forward was to keep pushing the boundaries. This wasn't just about recovery, it was about building a new kind of health system, one where people were empowered to be active participants in their own well-being. To ensure that the program would continue to evolve, Elon set up a dedicated research division within the company, focused solely on advancing recovery science. This division would collaborate with top universities and research institutions, pushing the envelope on everything from advanced nutrition and exercise science to regenerative medicine. As the program's first anniversary approached, Elon reflected on the journey. What had started as a simple idea to help people regain their strength had turned into a global movement. People were living healthier, more active lives. And though the challenges had been many, the results spoke for themselves. The question now wasn't whether the program would last. It was how many lives it would change in the years to come. And with that, Elon Musk realized something important. The future of healthcare wasn't just about curing illness, it was about empowering people to stay healthy for as long as possible. And that was the true vision behind the recovery protocol. This was just the beginning. The best was yet to come. Elon Musk had always been a master of thinking big. But even he was surprised at the rapid pace at which the recovery protocol had taken off. What had started as a personal project, an attempt to solve a problem in his own life, had snowballed into a global revolution, changing the way millions of people approached recovery, health, and well-being. As the recovery protocol continued to expand, its impact spread far beyond the United States. Elon's team began to receive requests from countries around the world, eager to implement the program in their own healthcare systems. It was no longer just a matter of offering an alternative to traditional medical treatments, it was about creating a new standard in health, one that transcended borders and language barriers. The first major international partnership came when the European Union signed on to integrate the recovery protocol into public health programs across multiple member states. Elon was initially hesitant, knowing that bureaucracy could slow down progress, but the potential for global impact was too great to ignore. After months of negotiations, regulatory hurdles, and adapting the program to meet European standards, the recovery protocol became a flagship initiative in the EU's push to modernize healthcare. But with global expansion came unforeseen challenges. Every country had its own unique healthcare system, and the nuances of cultural attitudes toward medicine and recovery added layers of complexity. In some nations, people embraced the food-based recovery system with enthusiasm, seeing it as a more natural alternative to traditional methods. In others, however, resistance was stronger than anticipated. The idea of taking control of one's recovery through diet and exercise was met with skepticism, especially in cultures that revered established medical practices. For example, in Japan, where traditional medicine had been practiced for centuries, the recovery protocol was initially met with hesitation. Many felt that it was too modern, too untested, and too far removed from the ancient healing techniques they had relied on for generations. Elon was invited to visit Tokyo to meet with healthcare leaders and address their concerns directly. The meeting was tense, but it was also an opportunity for Elon to showcase the data, the success stories, and the science behind the protocol. He understood the importance of respecting other cultures' approaches to health, and he framed the recovery protocol not as a replacement for traditional methods, but as a complementary addition, an alternative for those seeking a different path to recovery. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Japanese healthcare professionals, once resistant to the idea, began to explore how they could integrate the program with their own medical practices. The results, when they came, were astonishing. Patients who had struggled for years with chronic pain, immobility, and limited recovery from surgeries were now reporting improvements. People who had once been skeptical were now embracing the program, combining it with their traditional therapies to create a more holistic approach to healing. But the challenges didn't end there. The global expansion of the recovery protocol also had unintended consequences. As more and more people began following the program, new issues started to emerge. Some individuals, excited by the promise of rapid recovery, began to push their bodies too hard, too quickly. They disregarded the program's emphasis on gradual progression and recovery, leading to a rise in injuries caused by overexertion. Elon's team quickly realized that a more robust educational component was needed. The program wasn't just about providing the food or the exercises, it was about teaching people how to listen to their bodies, how to pace themselves, and how to build strength over time. The concept of slow recovery became just as important as the quick recovery that had initially drawn people in. In response, the team developed a comprehensive coaching platform, offering personalized guidance and ongoing support to ensure that participants were using the program correctly. The coaching platform was a game changer. It allowed individuals to track their progress, receive feedback from experts, and adjust their routines based on their unique needs. With this added layer of support, people were able to maximize the benefits of the program without risking injury or burnout. Meanwhile, the recovery protocol continued to gain traction in other parts of the world. In India, the program was integrated into wellness centers, where it was combined with yoga, meditation, and Ayurvedic practices. The fusion of ancient wisdom and modern science proved to be a powerful combination, drawing thousands of people seeking an all-encompassing approach to health. In Latin America, where fitness culture had already seen significant growth in recent years, the recovery protocol was embraced with open arms. The region, known for its strong emphasis on physical activity and wellness, saw the program as the next step in personal health and fitness. It quickly became a popular tool for athletes, fitness enthusiasts, and everyday people alike, with many reporting remarkable gains in mobility, strength, and overall vitality. As the program reached new corners of the globe, Elon found himself constantly balancing the needs of different regions, ensuring that the program was being adapted to fit each culture while maintaining its core principles. It was a delicate dance, but Elon had always been a master of innovation, and this challenge was no different. He trusted his team, knowing they would continue to refine and evolve the protocol to meet the demands of an ever-changing world. But not everyone was on board with the program's success. As the recovery protocol grew in popularity, it became clear that it was having an economic impact on the traditional healthcare industry. Hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and pharmaceutical companies began to feel the pressure. In some cases, they fought back, launching negative campaigns designed to discredit the program and its effectiveness. Elon wasn't surprised by this resistance, he had expected it. He knew that change, especially on the scale he was envisioning, would never come easily. But what surprised him was the intensity of the pushback. Some of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies went so far as to fund studies that aimed to undermine the program's scientific validity. The media was quick to pick up on the drama, and soon the recovery protocol was at the center of a global debate. Was it truly a revolution in health, or was it simply a clever marketing scheme that preyed on vulnerable people looking for quick fixes? Elon remained steadfast. He knew that the results spoke for themselves. The program was changing lives, people were regaining strength, overcoming chronic pain, and living healthier, more active lives. He refused to let the criticisms distract him from the mission. At the same time, Elon realized that the very resistance he faced was proof of the program's potential. When a disruptor is so powerful that it threatens established industries, that's when you know you're on the right track. As the controversy raged on, Elon doubled down. He called for even more transparency, encouraging independent researchers to analyze the data and publish their findings. He knew that the more people who saw the truth, the harder it would be for the naysayers to ignore the impact the recovery protocol was having on the world. The fight for the future of health was far from over. But as the program continued to spread and evolve, Elon was more certain than ever that he was on the right side of history. This was just the beginning of a new era in human health, and no amount of resistance could stop it. The world was changing, and the recovery protocol was leading the way. Months passed, and the recovery protocol's impact was undeniable. It had spread across continents, integrating into countries with varying healthcare systems, cultures, and medical practices. While some parts of the world had embraced it with open arms, others had remained cautious, and there were still persistent voices in the medical community that questioned its long-term effectiveness. But Elon Musk had always believed in the power of innovation to break through barriers. He wasn't about to let resistance stop the momentum. The data was clear, the program was changing lives. People who had once been told that they would never regain their strength or mobility were now living active, fulfilling lives. And not just that, they were thriving. They were doing things they had once thought impossible. It wasn't just the individuals who benefited from the program. Healthcare systems around the world had started to take note. Hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and even insurance companies had begun to see the economic value in promoting recovery through the protocol. By offering a more cost-effective, sustainable alternative to traditional treatments, the program was saving money, reducing hospital readmissions, and giving patients more control over their own health. But the real revolution was not just about saving money. It was about creating a new kind of healthcare, one that put the power of healing back into the hands of the people. The recovery protocol was teaching individuals how to take charge of their recovery process, emphasizing the importance of self-care, nutrition, and personalized training. Elon was invited to a healthcare summit in Geneva, where global leaders gathered to discuss the future of medicine. The event was a turning point for the recovery protocol. Elon's presentation, which included compelling data, real-life testimonials, and expert opinions, convinced many skeptics that this wasn't just a trend, it was the future of health. The future of healthcare, Elon told the audience, isn't about more pills, more surgeries, and more prescriptions. It's about people taking responsibility for their health, utilizing the resources available to them, and empowering themselves to heal. We are entering a new era of medicine, one where we combine the best of traditional treatments with modern innovations. The recovery protocol is just the beginning. The speech was met with resounding applause. Afterward, many attendees, doctors, researchers, and policymakers, came up to Elon, eager to learn more about how they could integrate the recovery protocol into their own practices. They were particularly intrigued by the idea of combining advanced technologies with the basics of nutrition, exercise, and recovery, and they began to see the potential for transforming their own healthcare systems. But as the program reached new heights, the complexities of managing a global movement became more apparent. Elon knew that for the program to continue to thrive, it needed more than just technological infrastructure, it needed a community. He had already built a dedicated research division, but now he needed something more. A platform where individuals could come together, share their stories, and support one another. Thus, the Recovery Collective was born. The Recovery Collective was a global online community that allowed participants to connect with each other, share their experiences, and learn from one another. It was a safe space where individuals could ask questions, seek advice, and offer encouragement to others who were on the same journey. The platform was built on the belief that healing wasn't just about physical recovery, it was also about emotional and mental well-being. The collective wasn't just a forum for sharing success stories. It was also a place for experts, nutritionists, physical therapists, psychologists, and other professionals, to contribute their knowledge, offering guidance and answering questions. It became a one-stop resource for anyone who wanted to learn more about the science of recovery, the principles of health, and how to take a holistic approach to well-being. As the Recovery Collective grew, it became clear that this was more than just a health program, it was a movement. People weren't just following the recovery protocol to regain their strength, they were embracing it as a way of life. It was about building resilience, maintaining health, and living with purpose. But with growth came new challenges. The sheer scale of the movement meant that there were now millions of people from all walks of life following the program. Some of them had no access to the latest technology or high-end nutrition, and they had to adapt the program in their own way. While many were able to make it work, others struggled with the complexities of adapting a high-tech solution to low-resource environments. To address this, Elon and his team launched a new initiative, the Recovery for All project. The goal of the project was to make the recovery protocol accessible to everyone, regardless of their financial situation or location. They partnered with organizations in underserved regions, providing low-cost resources, training, and support to ensure that people in low-income communities had the tools they needed to take control of their health. The Recovery for All initiative was met with overwhelming support from local governments and NGOs, who saw it as a way to improve public health at scale. The project quickly gained traction in parts of Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America, where access to healthcare had always been limited. The goal wasn't just to help people recover from injuries or illnesses, it was to create a preventative healthcare system, one that empowered people to stay healthy and avoid costly medical interventions in the future. But even as the program expanded, Elon knew that the journey was far from over. There were still questions to be answered, obstacles to overcome, and new challenges to face. The most pressing concern, however, was the program's long-term sustainability. Could this model really work for decades to come? Could it survive changes in technology, healthcare policy, and global economic shifts? Elon's answer was simple: the key to longevity is adaptability. He had always believed that success was about more than just staying ahead of the competition, it was about being willing to evolve, to listen to feedback, and to adjust your course when necessary. He knew that the recovery protocol wasn't perfect, but it was a living, breathing system, capable of growing and evolving with the needs of the people it served. As he looked to the future, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what the program had achieved. It had started as an experiment, a bold attempt to solve a problem in his own life. Now, it had become a global force, reshaping the way people thought about recovery, health, and wellness. The team immediately got to work, pulling together their best engineers, data scientists, and medical experts to develop an AI-powered platform that could learn from each participant's recovery journey. This would be a breakthrough, allowing the program to evolve with the person, creating a truly individualized experience that no other health protocol had ever offered. While this new initiative was still in the early stages, it already had the potential to revolutionize the way people recovered. No longer would participants have to follow a generalized plan. Instead, they would receive personalized updates and recommendations, which could adapt to their progress and provide them with the most effective recovery strategies. However, as with all innovations, there were roadblocks. The AI system required vast amounts of data to be effective, and that data needed to be accurate and consistent. In some parts of the world, where access to the latest technology was limited, it would be difficult to gather the necessary information. In addition, there were concerns over privacy and security. Could a system that tracked a person's health and recovery be trusted not to misuse that data? Elon knew that these concerns were valid. The last thing he wanted was to jeopardize the integrity of the program by compromising the privacy of those using it. He made it clear to his team that their primary focus would be to build a system that prioritized the security of the user's data, ensuring that it was encrypted, anonymized, and only used to improve the recovery process. The next hurdle was integrating the AI system with the global network of recovery protocol participants. The program had already reached millions of users, but there were still some areas where internet connectivity was poor, or where people struggled to use sophisticated technology. How could the AI system provide personalized updates when so many people had different access levels to the technology? After a series of brainstorming sessions, Elon's team came up with an innovative solution. They began working on a lightweight version of the program that could run on even the most basic smartphones. The system would provide updates, track recovery progress, and even suggest adjustments based on what data could be gathered through simple inputs. In areas where internet access was limited, the system could work offline, storing data until a connection could be re-established. In the meantime, the team had also begun integrating the recovery protocol with the world's leading fitness trackers and health monitoring devices. This would provide even more comprehensive data, allowing the AI to track everything from daily physical activity to heart rate, sleep patterns, and diet. The idea was to create an ecosystem where people didn't need to rely on just one tool. They could combine their existing health technology with the program's resources, creating a holistic view of their well-being. These innovations, however, didn't come without costs. The development of the AI-powered platform required significant investment, not just in technology, but in research and development to ensure that it worked across different demographics and health conditions. Elon and his team pushed forward, pouring resources into the project, but they knew that the future of the recovery protocol hinged on its success. Meanwhile, the global healthcare community continued to watch closely. Some experts were skeptical of the program's rapid rise and were quick to point out the challenges it faced. They questioned whether the program could truly deliver on its promise of long-term recovery and whether it was sustainable at scale. Others had concerns about the lack of rigorous clinical trials and whether it was safe to recommend the program to the millions of people who were now following it. Elon, however, was undeterred. He knew that real-world results spoke louder than clinical trials. The stories of recovery that flooded in daily, from people regaining the ability to walk after years of immobility to athletes returning to peak form, were his proof. He knew that the program was working, and he was determined to continue improving it. In the months that followed, as the AI system began to roll out, something remarkable happened. The recovery protocol became more than just a program, it became a lifestyle. People were using it not just to recover from injuries, but as a preventive measure. The focus had shifted from recovery to prevention and wellness. People were incorporating the principles of the protocol into their everyday lives, eating better, moving more, and taking responsibility for their own health. The AI-driven platform made it easier than ever for people to stay on track. Those who had once struggled with the program now found themselves receiving targeted guidance that helped them achieve their recovery goals more efficiently. No longer did they need to guess what exercises or foods would work best for them, the AI did it for them. But with this success came the realization that they had only scratched the surface. Elon knew that the future was about more than just the recovery protocol, it was about changing the entire healthcare system. And as the world embraced this new form of recovery, it became clear that the old ways of doing things were on their way out. It wasn't just about recovering from injuries. It was about building resilience, improving longevity, and empowering individuals to take charge of their own well-being. The roadblocks they faced were significant, but Elon had always thrived under pressure. And as the recovery protocol evolved, he knew that the real challenge was not in overcoming obstacles, but in continuing to innovate. The future of healthcare wasn't just about medicine, it was about taking a more holistic, proactive approach to living a healthier life. And Elon Musk was ready to lead the way. The road ahead was long, but the journey had only just begun. As the recovery protocol's AI-powered system continued to evolve and improve, it reached a tipping point. The initial phases of expansion had brought in millions of users across the globe, but now it was beginning to shift from a novelty to a permanent fixture in the way people approached health and wellness. What was once a bold idea, born from personal need and creative ambition, had become an unstoppable global movement. Elon Musk had always dreamed of changing the world. And now, with the recovery protocol, it was clear that the world was changing, in ways that no one had ever anticipated. The ripple effect of his innovation had begun to spread far beyond the healthcare sector. The results were nothing short of transformative. In the United States, the program was being integrated into corporate wellness programs. Employers, from small startups to major tech giants, were offering their employees access to the recovery protocol as part of their benefits packages. This wasn't just about getting people back on their feet after an injury, it was about ensuring that employees stayed healthy, resilient, and productive. Companies saw not only a decrease in healthcare costs but also an increase in employee engagement and satisfaction. In Europe, national health systems in countries like Germany, the UK, and France had started partnering with the program to help manage chronic conditions. Instead of patients being pushed through endless cycles of expensive treatments, they were being taught how to heal and strengthen themselves from within. Local governments had begun funding initiatives that provided the recovery protocol to communities in need, ensuring that anyone could access the tools and resources they needed to reclaim their health. But perhaps the most powerful transformation was happening in countries where access to healthcare had always been limited. In parts of Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America, the Recovery for All project was beginning to show real promise. With a mobile-first platform that didn't rely on expensive equipment or infrastructure, the program was able to provide personalized care to those who needed it the most. People in remote villages were learning to manage their own health, and in some cases, even teaching others. They weren't just recovering from injuries, they were recovering from the idea that health was something out of their control. The recovery protocol had started a revolution not just in healthcare, but in how people viewed their own power over their bodies. It was no longer about waiting for a doctor to prescribe a solution, it was about becoming an active participant in one's own healing process. As Elon walked through the now bustling headquarters of the recovery protocol in Palo Alto, he felt a sense of pride. The team had expanded tremendously, and there was an electric energy in the air. Engineers and healthcare experts were working together to refine the platform, expand its capabilities, and make it even more accessible. Meanwhile, outreach teams were coordinating with global health organizations to provide free or discounted access to the program for low-income communities worldwide. But even with all the progress, Elon knew that the recovery protocol was far from finished. There were still countless challenges to overcome. Some of the program's features were still in their infancy, and not everyone was ready to fully embrace the changes. In some regions, there was still resistance to the idea of self-directed recovery, as people held on to traditional medical practices. One evening, while Elon was reviewing the latest data, he received a message from an old friend, Dr. Elaine Armstrong, a prominent physician who had initially been skeptical about the recovery protocol. "Hey, Elon," the message began, "I've been following the progress of the program closely, and I have to admit, I was wrong. The data is staggering, and more importantly, it's making a real difference. I'd love to discuss how we can integrate this into our hospital networks here in New York. Let's talk soon." Elon smiled, feeling a sense of validation. Dr. Armstrong had been one of the loudest critics when the program first launched. But now, even she was acknowledging the profound impact it was having. The following week, Elon flew to New York to meet with Dr. Armstrong and her team. They spent hours discussing how the recovery protocol could be integrated into hospital settings, particularly for patients with long-term recovery needs or chronic conditions. As they brainstormed, it became clear that there was a huge opportunity to shift the healthcare system toward a model that was more preventative, personalized, and empowering. "What you're creating here, Elon, isn't just about recovering from an injury," Dr. Armstrong said. "It's about changing the very foundation of healthcare. You're not just healing the body, you're teaching people how to live healthier lives in the first place." Elon nodded. He had always believed that the future of healthcare wasn't about treating illnesses, it was about preventing them. And that was precisely what the recovery protocol was doing. By focusing on holistic health, self-recovery, and sustainable well-being, the program was reducing the need for expensive surgeries, medications, and long hospital stays. As they continued their discussions, a new vision began to form. What if hospitals didn't need to be the first point of contact for most people's health issues? What if people could recover, stay healthy, and even thrive without ever stepping foot in a hospital? The idea was radical, but Elon wasn't afraid of radical ideas. The recovery protocol was already proving that individuals had the power to take their health into their own hands. What if healthcare systems, instead of being reactive, became proactive? What if the healthcare system was built on the foundation of prevention and empowerment, rather than treating illness after the fact? Back in Silicon Valley, Elon's thoughts were racing. He called a meeting with his executive team and outlined his new vision, a global shift toward preventative healthcare. They began laying out a new roadmap, one that involved creating even more integrated systems that connected not just the recovery protocol to users, but all aspects of health and wellness. But even as Elon's vision expanded, he remained grounded in the core mission, to help people reclaim their strength, their health, and their lives. With this new direction, he set his sights on the future. The recovery protocol had already transformed millions of lives, and the next phase would only build on that success. With new technology, new partnerships, and new ways to engage with healthcare, the future was bright. The healthcare industry, for all its advancements, was still based on models that hadn't changed much in decades. Elon had always been one to challenge the status quo, and he saw now more than ever that the world needed a complete reimagining of what healthcare could look like. This was just the beginning. Elon leaned back in his chair, staring at the holographic map of the world on his screen. The recovery protocol had become a beacon of hope for millions, and soon, the revolution would expand even further. And this time, there would be no turning back. The world was on the brink of a new era in healthcare, and Elon Musk was leading the charge. The question was no longer whether the program would succeed. It was how far it could go, and how much further it could push the boundaries of what we thought was possible. The sun rose over the sprawling cityscape of Los Angeles, casting long shadows across the Recovery Protocol headquarters. It was a time of great anticipation. The final phase of the Recovery Protocol initiative was about to be launched, and Elon Musk knew that this moment would define the future of healthcare. For months, the team had been refining the AI system, gathering data, and improving the user experience. They had tested the platform on different populations, gathered feedback, and incorporated it all into the program. Now, the recovery protocol wasn't just a solution for injury recovery, it was a comprehensive health platform that promised to transform how the world approached wellness, longevity, and disease prevention. Elon stood at the edge of the rooftop, looking out at the horizon, his mind racing with possibilities. The AI system was now fully capable of providing individualized health plans, incorporating not just recovery but also fitness, nutrition, mental well-being, and disease prevention. It was a holistic approach that addressed all aspects of a person's health, and it could be accessed by anyone, anywhere, with just a smartphone. The team had worked tirelessly to create a version of the program that was compatible with the most basic smartphones, ensuring that even in the most remote and underserved regions, people could access the tools they needed to take control of their health. No longer would geography, income, or access to medical professionals stand in the way of a person's ability to heal and thrive. As Elon turned to re-enter the building, he was greeted by his senior leadership team. The room was buzzing with excitement, each team member eager to see the culmination of years of hard work. On the large screen at the front of the room, the final version of the Recovery Protocol app was being demonstrated, showing how the system could analyze real-time data from wearables and adjust the user's health plan accordingly. "All right, team," Elon said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "This is it. Let's make this go global." The plan was simple but ambitious. By the end of the month, the Recovery Protocol would officially launch in over 150 countries, with a goal of reaching 100 million users by the end of the year. The system would be available in multiple languages, and partnerships had already been secured with major healthcare organizations, tech giants, and fitness companies. The mission was clear: to empower people to live healthier lives, and to do so in a way that was sustainable, accessible, and personalized. No one had ever attempted something on this scale before, but Elon believed in the power of data, technology, and most importantly, human potential. However, with this final push came some unexpected challenges. The sheer scale of the global launch meant that technical difficulties arose, and some regions experienced delays as they adapted the platform to local needs and infrastructure. Elon and his team knew that there would be bumps along the way, but they were prepared for them. After all, they had faced countless obstacles before, and overcome them. One of the most critical aspects of the launch was the collaboration with local governments and healthcare providers. While the Recovery Protocol had proven to be successful in the private sector, its acceptance in public healthcare systems was still a work in progress. Some governments were resistant to the idea of decentralizing healthcare in favor of a more individualized, tech-driven model. But Elon was determined to win them over. He knew that the program's real success would be measured not just by the number of users, but by its ability to integrate into existing healthcare structures and improve them. "I want to see this in every hospital," Elon told his team during one of their final strategy meetings. "We need to make sure that doctors and nurses understand how to use this system as part of their daily workflow. It can't just be a replacement for healthcare, it needs to be an enhancement." The team set to work on training healthcare professionals, holding seminars and workshops around the world to ensure that medical staff were fully equipped to use the recovery protocol alongside traditional treatments. As the program began to gain traction in hospitals and clinics, it became clear that the recovery protocol wasn't just changing individual lives, it was changing the very way healthcare was delivered. The first major breakthrough came in India, where the recovery protocol was integrated into a public health initiative aimed at tackling the high rates of diabetes and hypertension. By using the program's personalized approach to nutrition, exercise, and medication adherence, thousands of people were able to take control of their conditions and significantly reduce their risk of serious complications. The government's partnership with Elon's team was hailed as a success, and soon, other countries followed suit, eager to adopt a similar approach to disease prevention. As the program's reach continued to grow, so too did the stories of success. From athletes regaining their strength after career-threatening injuries to individuals with chronic conditions managing their health without relying on expensive treatments, the recovery protocol was proving that health wasn't just about what happened in a doctor's office, it was about what people did every day to take care of their bodies and minds. The success stories began pouring in from all corners of the globe. In Africa, a young woman named Nia had used the recovery protocol to recover from a debilitating car accident. She had been told by doctors that she would never walk again, but with the help of the AI-driven recovery plan, she was able to regain her strength and mobility. Her story was shared across social media, inspiring millions of others to take control of their own health. In South America, a professional soccer player named Carlos had struggled with a recurring knee injury that threatened to end his career. After using the recovery protocol to strengthen his knee and improve his overall fitness, he was able to return to the field stronger than ever. His story became a symbol of hope for athletes around the world, showing that recovery was possible even after the most devastating setbacks. As these stories continued to accumulate, Elon and his team began to realize the true impact of their work. The recovery protocol wasn't just a program, it was a movement. It was a movement toward self-empowerment, toward a future where individuals could take charge of their health and well-being in a way that was never before possible. But with success came new challenges. As the program grew, so too did the responsibility. Elon knew that this was no longer just about creating a product or a service, it was about creating a legacy. He wasn't just building a business. He was building a foundation for a healthier, more resilient world. As the year drew to a close, the numbers spoke for themselves. The recovery protocol had been adopted by millions, with success stories pouring in from every continent. But despite the overwhelming success, Elon remained focused on the future. He knew that there was still much to be done, that the road ahead would be filled with new obstacles to overcome and new innovations to create. Looking out over the city once more, Elon smiled to himself. The world had been forever changed. And in the grand scheme of things, this was just the beginning. We've only just begun, he said softly to no one in particular, his voice filled with quiet resolve. The legacy of the recovery protocol had only just begun to unfold, and it would go on to change the future of healthcare forever. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?